Hey there guys, I am SonicGhost, and today we're here to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart. A thing I've been doing now for over 12 years, and that is content creation. And more or less how you can go about making your own videos here to post on YouTube or other social media platforms, or to live stream on Twitch, YouTube, or again, whatever other platforms that you choose to stream on. As I've gotten a lot of comments over the years asking, how do I do this thing, or what kind of hardware I use, or software, and to be honest, there's so many different things that you can use nowadays, and so many different ways to use specific gear or software that it's a little overwhelming, honestly, now for a brand new content creator to get into this kind of hobby, because there's a lot of stuff that is available to you to use, and there's a lot of people telling you to buy this piece of gear or use this specific software or to do things this specific way or that way, and people get very confused when it comes to how to start making videos or live streaming. And today I want to go ahead and talk about how you can get yourself into this hobby and get started, because when I first started making content here, way back on YouTube in 2011, things were very different at the time, as I only really had very limited gear and very limited options when it came to software to use. So for me, starting things out, it was pretty rough. By today's standards, on the other hand, there's so many different options that I really wanted to make a video to tell people more or less, like, here's some of the things you can do to get started to see if this is a hobby that you want to pursue. So I want to go ahead and start out by talking about how I first started making videos here on YouTube, and then how I first started to live stream on Twitch. So to start at the very beginning, I first started YouTube with a headset microphone that I got at the time that I needed to use for an online Spanish class, as that class required us to record sentences in Spanish every once in a while to send to our teacher in order to, make sure we knew how to speak the language and were understanding things correctly. But to do that, we had to record our voices, and I didn't really have a microphone at the time, so I got a headset microphone to use. And this microphone is what I used to first start making videos on YouTube. And at the time as well, I had an old capture card that we got at the time with a laptop around 2005. It was an old TV tuner capture card. And this thing wasn't being used for many, many years. It was just sitting in a closet. So I was able to repurpose that as a video capture card to record console gameplay. And this is how I started. I started using this specific gear and an editing piece of software called Cyberlink Power Director, as this piece of software was the only way that I could record footage off of that TV tuner. So when I first started, I was using Audacity to record from a headset microphone, Cyberlink Power Director to record from a TV tuner capture card that was made in 2005, and editing all my stuff in that same editing software and producing those videos here to YouTube. And back then, what I had was some of the best stuff you could have gotten at that point in time, because this is before HD video was really a thing on these online platforms. So you were able to get away with standard definition capture card recording, and I was recording lower quality games anyways, like N64, NES, Super Nintendo, games that didn't really have the highest graphical quality, so they hold up still by today's standards. So this is what I used starting out, and it worked. And this is the key thing to take away from this video. Use whatever you have to first start this hobby, as if you're not sure if it's for you, the best thing to do is to try it out and see if this is something you enjoy before you start investing money into all of the gear that you would want to have for something like this, as you want to make sure this is something you enjoy before you spend a bunch of money on something, realize this is not for you, and then regret those said purchases. I didn't buy my first high definition capture card until over a year into making videos, as by that point I knew this is something I really like to do and want to pursue even further gear and also just like more opportunities to record other things. So give me options that I didn't have in the past. Getting a high definition capture card allowed me to record HD content from systems I couldn't even hook up at the time to that old TV tuner, and allowed me to do a lot more. But this is after I knew I wanted to get into this hobby. And same came when it comes to the live streaming side of things, as at that time I started to stream, which was around 2013, there was barely any options out there for live streaming. The best things you had was XSplit and OBS, but OBS is not how it is today. It's a completely different software, very bare bones, and really hard to use. So I started with XSplit, which was pretty user-friendly, had a lot of options to it, but it wasn't free. It was a subscription model service. You could use a free tier, but it limited you to 720p at 30 frames per second at most. And you only had a handful of scenes to use. I believe it was only up to 4 scenes at most, so you can have a game scene, an intermission, a starting screen, and a full camera, and that's all you were allowed. If you wanted to do anything else, say like you wanted to have a handheld console stream, or maybe a reaction screen to watch videos with your camera in it, you couldn't do those because you only had 4 scenes to work with, so you had to get rid of one of those other screens. And this was what really limited me back in the day, but I eventually did try out the paid version of the software, as again, I was doing streaming for a while and I was starting to enjoy it. So I was able to invest into XSplit, getting myself a license for a short amount of time. I used XSplit for about 2 years, I would say, before swapping to OBS Studio. So by that point, I knew I wanted to stream and I was wanting to invest into it. But today, you don't need to invest into a lot of stuff, honestly. When it comes to software, you can get away with not spending a single cent on things, as there are so many free options out there. So let's go ahead and first start off with the software side of things. As I just mentioned, you can get things nowadays for free because there are so many things out there that you have your pickings. But if you're just getting started into this, I recommend the free options and then working your way up to paid alternatives if there are better things out there that you would want to use. But nowadays, the free options, they're so good, you don't even need to buy a paid version of any kind of software. So to start things out, the recording / streaming software, as this is a thing I use for both purposes, and I'm using it right now to record this very video. So to start things out, you can go ahead and get yourself OBS Studio to record your videos and to live stream. This is 100% free, as this is an open source piece of software. So this is a very powerful tool that lets you do a lot of things, and it is community backed. So because it's open source, other people can contribute to the code, which means they can also add features to the said software. And since they have access to the said code, they can also develop plugins to add to the software as well, so they can add their own features to OBS Studio. It's a very powerful piece of software that I've used now for many, many years, and it's the most recommended piece of software I see out there for content creation, as it can do pretty much everything you want. It has so much customization to it. You can have like unlimited sources and scenes, putting pretty much whatever you want anywhere. It works with pretty much everything out there on the market when it comes to audio gear, video gear, you name it. This is a really powerful piece of software that I use basically daily in my setup, as I'm always using it for something. So this is what I recommend nowadays. In the past, when I was getting into live streaming, I recommended people use XSplit because OBS back in the day before it became OBS Studio was a little more complicated to use, and it just didn't have as many things in it that OBS Studio now has when it comes to features. So it was a little bit harder to recommend for a lot of people's setups. It was, from what I can understand back in the day, really good for streaming PC games, but when you wanted to stream console games, that's when things were a little bit harder to use, as it just didn't work with a lot of capture cards at the time. But nowadays, OBS Studio can work with whatever you throw at it, so it's highly recommended. Now, in terms of the audio recording software, again, you can just use OBS Studio because that's what I'm doing right now to record my microphone. And OBS just recently updated to add a bunch of audio formats in the recording tab. So now you can record at whatever audio quality you want. You record in low quality, you record high quality, you record lossless audio. Like, no matter what you want to do, this software can do it. But if you just want raw audio, you just want to record from your microphone only, what I use nowadays is Audacity. This is what I've been using since the very beginning of starting this YouTube channel. Even before this YouTube channel started, I was using Audacity since 2007, and it's been a pretty solid audio recording software. Now, this isn't the most feature-packed audio recording software out there, so it's no Adobe Audition, for example. You won't have some of the things that a paid recording software like Audition can have, but Audacity does more than enough, in my opinion, and it can record in raw audio format, lossless audio quality, or even compressed quality. Like, no matter what you want to record at, it can do it and then produce whatever kind of quality you want out of it. It's just very simple and easy to use, and it is free. So this is what I recommend people to use nowadays if you just want to record from your microphone. It's just a really solid and easy to use piece of software. And again, I've been using this since 2007, so it's been that good for me that I can still use it by today's standards, and I have no problems with it whatsoever, no matter what I throw at it. So that's what you can record for your microphone with, or any other audio source. For photo editing software, you can use a lot of different options out there, as there's a lot of free options. Like Git, for example, is one I've heard people recommend a lot over the years, but something I've used a lot over the years and I'll recommend to people to start out is Paint.net. This is a software that mimics Photoshop, so if you've used Photoshop in some fashion in the past, then Paint.net may look familiar to you because it's set up in a very similar way. And in fact, there's even a plugin out there you can download that lets you open Photoshop files in Paint.net. But this is a software you can use to add multiple layers or images on top of each other, put different effects on your said images, crop things out, paint things over other things, erase things out of your image. Like, you can do pretty much everything here that you can do in Photoshop in Paint.net. There are some limitations in comparison to something like Photoshop, you have to keep that in mind, but something like Paint.net is very easy to use, it's very user-friendly, and it is a free piece of software. So if you need something to make graphics for your live streams or thumbnails for YouTube, Paint.net has been something I've been using since I started making YouTube videos back in 2011, and it's still a software that I use from time to time in my own content by today's standards. So I would recommend people start out with something like Paint.net. And the last big piece of software I need to talk about is a video editing software. Now, if you live stream and live stream only, you don't need any video editing software, as if you're just streaming out video and you're not wanting to cut down clips of those said streams, then you don't need to download anything. But if you want to edit your videos and produce, maybe say shorts, for example, on YouTube, or get small little clips to post on social media, then you're going to want something to edit your videos down with. And what I recommend people nowadays to use is DaVinci Resolve. And in fact, this entire video you're watching, this has been edited using DaVinci Resolve. This is 100% free to use, and if you want more features in the software, which honestly you don't really need because the free version of DaVinci has so much for you already, but if you do need more out of your video editing software, there is a paid version of this that costs roughly $300, which may sound like a lot, but you get a lifetime license. And in today's market, that's unheard of. A lifetime? Everyone wants a subscription service from you. In fact, the editing software I use on the regular basis is Adobe Premiere Pro. This is a subscription-based service, and I gotta pay a monthly fee just to use it. So, not really the best after a while to be using a software like this, paying a monthly fee, because after a while you're paying more than what DaVinci Resolve can pay in a lifetime license. So if you need more out of it, there is that option, but I just recommend most people nowadays to stick with the free version of this said software, as It has more than enough features. You won't need the paid version, but if you do, it is there for you. And if you buy some Blackmagic products, from what I understand, it does come with a lifetime license to DaVinci Resolve. So technically, if you want a license from this, you just buy a piece of the gear, and now you have DaVinci Resolve with all of its features. But keep in mind, that's probably more expensive than just the license on its own, because some of their gear can be pretty pricey, but that's still an option that I just wanted to mention. Now let's go ahead and talk about video equipment. This is how we're going to be capturing things like our game consoles, or cameras, or even our PC games. And I want to start with that one first, the PC side of things, because if you want to record a PC game or even some emulator footage, then all you need is OBS Studio. Going back to that free piece of software once again. You can use OBS Studio to screen capture your entire display. You can grab a specific window to do a window capture of just that thing alone, or a game capture to also hook into your PC game and just get that game alone. And you can do all this for free. No matter what kind of hardware you have, you can easily record it with OBS. Although, there are other free pieces of software out there that come with your graphics card. So there's NVIDIA Shadowplay for your NVIDIA card, and there's the AMD equivalent as well for an AMD graphics card. So you can use the included recording softwares that come with your graphics card if you have that in your computer, because not everyone has a graphics card, mind you. But if you don't have a graphics card, again, OBS Studio, that can just be used on literally any computer. But keep in mind though, if you are trying to record PC games and you don't have a graphics card, the mileage may vary of how well that may work, because to do any kind of recordings or live streams, you don't need the most powerful of hardware nowadays, but you want at least some kind of graphics card, as most graphics cards nowadays can record on a dedicated recording and video encoding chip of some kind. So by doing this, it offloads all that work onto a separate chip that's doing only the video stuff. And then the other stuff, like the gameplay, for example, is on another part of the graphics card chipset. So you don't have to worry about any kind of performance problems. Your video will look clean, smooth, and just have no compression to it whatsoever, depending on your settings. And then your game will run also nice and smooth as well without any kind of frame drops. But if you don't have a graphics card, then recording strict PC games may be a little bit harder. If you're doing emulation stuff, then it's not very much of a problem, depending on the emulation quality you're doing. So say you're playing an NES game or a Game Boy, any computer can record those with no problem while still playing the emulator, and you're fine. You don't have to worry about it. But if you're doing something, say like GameCube on Dolphin, then maybe you can have some performance problems with that, trying to record and play at the same time. So there are settings you have to tweak around, and this video is not to talk about the settings you're going to be using for your live streams or your recordings. OBS itself does a good job at telling you what things you can use, and it has its own auto configuration wizard to just get you the settings you need out of the box, no matter what kind of hardware you have. And I just recommend people use the auto config wizard if they don't know what they're doing. So you don't have to worry about if you have the right settings or not picked, because the software can do that for you. But when it comes to recording console stuff, this is where you're going to need some kind of capture card. And nowadays, there are a plethora of capture cards out there. You can easily get capture cards for under $20. And this is an insane deal, because if you're just wanting something to get started, then you can just pick up any of the 4K capable capture cards, which are essentially Elgato Cam Link style things, where it just has an HDMI input and it plugs directly into a USB port in your computer. Although mileage may vary on what these capture cards can actually accept on video resolution. When they say 4K capable, that doesn't mean you can plug in your PS5 and play in 4K 60 quality, because that is not what something like this is able to do. It's a $16 capture card, so it's gonna have limitations. A lot of these capture cards can only record in about 1080p 30 frames per second, around this price range, which, to be fair, is perfectly fine and more than serviceable when it comes to video quality. But if you want that smoother frame rate, have that 60 frames per second option, then I'll recommend setting your equipment to 720p as all these cheap capture cards should also be able to accept 720p 60 frames per second. And when I was recording with 1080 30 capture cards back in the day, with things like the Hauppauge HD PVR or the AVerMedia Live Gamer Portable, these weren't able to accept 1080p 30 frames per second at most, so I just set my equipment to 720p and captured in 720 60, because to me, I prefer the smoother animation of 60 frames per second than the sharper image quality of 1080p. And in your modern video editing software, recording software, you can bump that up to 1080p and just upscale it. So it won't look really that different in comparison to just recording in native 1080p, while you still get that smooth effect. So this is one thing you can do, and if you're live streaming with graphics on your screen, shrinking down the game size, people won't even able to see the difference between 720p and 1080p. I streamed console games using a capture card set to 720p 60 frames per second, and people couldn't tell that I was using something that was in 720p compared to my normal setup that's always 1080p. So that goes to show, it doesn't really matter if you're shrinking the video feed of your gameplay. If it's in 720 or 1080, you can get away with either or. But if one of these capture cards don't really work all that well for you, I mean, for starters, they don't have any kind of HDMI output and they can have input delay. For example, the one I was using, it had a little over a second of input delay. So to fix this in streaming software like OBS, I had to put a audio and video off-sync timer of 900 milliseconds on all of my gear. Setting a off-sync timer of 900 milliseconds got all my other equipment to be in sync with my capture card. Otherwise, I would do something and then a second later it would happen in the game, and after a while that would get pretty distracting. So you'd have to keep that in mind. Some of these cheaper capture cards, they will be running at slower speeds on your computer, meaning that they're going to have delay, and you're going to have to fix that said delay with your camera feed and your microphones, which is a very easy thing to do, mind you, but it is something you may have to do. But you also would probably need a HDMI splitter so you can actually get that console game to your television without that same kind of input delay, because you're not going to want to play with a second input delay. That's just torture. So if you want to fix that, you just get a HDMI splitter for about $15 or so, and that will fix the delay when it comes to your gameplay. But another thing you could do is you could get yourself a higher quality capture card if you had the funds, but I only recommend doing this after you enjoy making videos and live streams, because at this point, spending about $16 or so on a capture card doesn't really feel like a waste if this is something that you're just not really a fan of doing. So if you decide to stop, you can still use this capture card for other things, and if you don't, less than $20 doesn't feel like as much of a waste as, say, $200 for your Elgato capture cards that are on the market. That would be a much harder thing to recommend to people by today's standards. But if you want something that's a little more quality and backed with a proper warranty from a reputable company, a capture card I hear a lot of people recommend nowadays is the EVGA XR1 Lite. The EVGA XR1 Lite is a very simple capture card to use, and it only costs $100 brand new. You get a warranty back with the card. It can record in 1080p 60. It has 4K pass-through, so you can still play in 4K on your TV. And it's comparable to your standard capture cards on the market from Elgato. This here is an Elgato HD60S, and this is something I've used for many, many years. And this is a great capture card for live streaming, and from what I can understand, the EVGA XR1 Lite is essentially one of these, but for half the price. So I would recommend people get one of those if they wanted to spend more money on a set capture card and you know that this is a hobby that you want to pursue. And if you have a power desktop computer and you can put add-on cards in there, so PCI Express cards, then another capture card that I recommend people use is the AVerMedia Live Gamer HD2. This is a 1080p 60 PCI Express capture card, meaning that this plugs directly into your computer, going straight through your motherboard. You can only use one of these capture cards if you have a desktop, so if you have a laptop, I cannot recommend a card like this as it will not work, but the AVerMedia Live Gamer HD2 is a very solid card. It costs a little over $100 today, as these cards aren't as in high demand as they used to, so they sell for a lot less. I bought my Live Gamer HD2 for about $120 a few years back, and nowadays you can get them on Amazon for under $150, so keep in mind this is still a pretty big investment. But this is a capture card you just leave plugged in your computer, and you can just keep all your cords plugged into it, so it's ready to go. All you gotta do is just open your recording software and go. So this is another thing that you can do if you had the extra money to spend and were now convinced that this is a hobby you want to pursue, you want to make videos more often, you want to do live streams with console games. So now you're ready to spend this kind of money. And something like this is a solid option for under $200. Next up, I want to go ahead and talk about audio gear. As now we figured out how we can capture our games, whether it be gaming on a computer or gaming on a console, now let's go ahead and talk about what we can use to record our voices and send it out to the world. So I'm gonna go through a lot of different pieces of hardware that I have lying around for a multitude of different price tags, and we're gonna go ahead and compare them all. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into some audio tests. Okay, so at this stage of the video, now we're gonna test a bunch of different microphones and compare their audio quality to each other. And we're also going to be looking at some of the other cameras that you can use in the setup. Starting now, which is going to be the camera we're using for the majority of these tests, is a webcam, and this one specifically is the Logitech C920 webcam. And to start this audio test, we are recording now on my main microphone, which is the Audio-Technica AT2020. This is the XLR version, which is running into a Focusrite Scarlett Solo audio interface. And this is our first audio sample. This is what I always use to record videos and to live stream over my Twitch channel. So this is the normal sound that you will get from a lot of my content and will be our control for the said audio test. So with that said, let's go ahead and test out our first microphone. This is how it sounds using the built-in microphone using my Logitech C920 webcam that I have mounted to my computer monitor. Keep in mind, right now I am recording video, and this does change how the camera sounds, as when the camera is not in use, then the audio quality changes dramatically, as when the camera's in use, you can hear things moving inside of the camera. This is how it sounds using the microphone that is built into my laptop's webcam. And this does a good job at picking up my voice, but this is a very sensitive microphone, and since it is attached to my laptop, any action I do on the said computer, like say click the mouse, or if I go and type on the machine, you will hear all of these different actions being picked up by the microphone. So you have to be careful what you're doing on your computer at the time while using your built-in microphone on your laptop, but also when your computer is starting to use more of its resources with its CPU and GPU, and the computer starts getting warm, the fans have to start ramping up. And when the fans get loud on your computer, there's a lot more background noise now being picked up by my laptop's built-in microphone, as now my computer is using a lot more of its resources. Both my CPU and my graphics card are nearing 100% utilization windows, meaning they are getting really warm. So now my computer's fans have kicked into a much faster spinning mode to cool things down better. But by doing this, now my laptop is really loud, and all of those fan noises are now being picked up by the said built-in microphone on the webcam. So a laptop's built-in webcam does work, but it picks up a lot more background noise, and you have to be very mindful of how loud your computer is when using this microphone to get good quality audio out of this said device. This is how it sounds when I'm using the Samsung Go mic clipped to my computer monitor in the cardioid polar pattern, meaning it's only picking up stuff in front of the microphone and nothing around it, only in the front. This is how it sounds using the Samsung Go mic, once again, still clipped to my computer monitor, but now we are using the omnidirectional polar pattern, meaning it is picking up audio not just in the front this time, but all around the microphone, meaning it can pick up a lot more background noise. This is how the audio sounds using the Samsung Go mic about 6 inches away from my mouth in the cardioid polar pattern. This is how I recommend people use this microphone if they can, as if you want to get it this close to your mouth, I will recommend getting yourself a microphone boom arm for about $20 or so. That way you can position this mic where you want it. And getting it the closer to your mouth like this, if you possibly can, will give you better sounding audio. But if you're going to use this microphone this close, I recommend getting a pop filter for another $15 if possible. Or if you don't want to spend the extra money on a pop filter right now, you can use the microphone off axis to your mouth like I am now, as talking directly into this microphone has some harsh plosives. What I mean by plosives? Pikmin or Pokemon? Pikmin or Pokemon? Yeah, the P's and B's don't sound the best up close and personal with this microphone. So get a pop filter for this thing or use it on the side of your mouth if you can. This is how the audio sounds using the Samsung Go mic about 6 inches away from my mouth using the omnidirectional polar pattern. Now this polar pattern makes the microphone a lot louder, but it also picks up noise no matter what direction you're using the microphone, which is good for conference calls in my opinion with multiple people in a room. But if you wanted to use this microphone 6 inches away from your mouth in this mode, this is how it sounds. Again, I would recommend getting a microphone arm to position this thing where you want it to make it more comfortable instead of having to hold it all the time, and use it off axis to your mouth if possible, or get a pop filter as Pikmin or Pokemon. Pikmin or Pokemon. Plosives, even in omnidirectional mode, are very strong and harsh to the ears. This is how the audio quality sounds using the Pyle PD58 microphone. And out of all the microphones we're going to be testing in today's roundup, this is by far the cheapest microphone out there, as this thing only cost me about $14 on Amazon, which I think is a steal. But there is a catch to using a microphone like this, and that this is a XLR only microphone. So this is not a USB microphone or a 3.5 millimeter jacked headphone that you can just plug into any kind of computer. You're going to need to find some way to connect XLR to your computer. Now, this comes with an XLR to 1/4 inch jack plug. What I was able to do is I was able to get a 1/4 inch to 3.5 millimeter adapter, and I was able to plug this microphone directly into that adapter and then take it into a 3.5 millimeter jack onto my computer. And by plugging in the microphone this way, I'm able to use it now in Windows, but I had to increase the volume as high as it can go. So this microphone is set to 100% at a 30% decibel boost, which is the maximum amount of volume you can give a microphone in Windows. And by doing this, now the microphone may sound good, but if I stop talking, you can hear a lot of background hiss being picked up by the internal components in my said computer. So this method does work, but there's another way you can connect an XLR mic to your said computer. Now I have connected the Pyle PD58 microphone to an XLR interface. Specifically, I'm using the Focusrite Scarlett Solo 3rd Gen, and I have plugged this microphone's 1/4 inch jack directly into the 1/4 inch input on my said mixer. Now, you can find an audio interface or a mixer nowadays for $50 or even less if you know where to look. So, if you just want to use an XLR microphone directly to your computer, then you can find yourself an XLR interface and connect the microphone that way. And now, if I'm quiet for a moment, there's not nearly as much background noise coming from this said audio interface in comparison to my computer's internal microphone jack. So this would sound cleaner no matter what kind of audio interface you're using compared to plugging a 1/4 inch microphone directly to a 3.5 millimeter jack into a computer. And keep in mind, this might not even work for everyone's setups, so your mileage may vary on how well the 1/4 inch jack method converted to a 3.5 jack would even work for you. But another thing I want to mention with this microphone is that you only get the microphone and the cable in the box. So you're going to have to hold the microphone like this at all times when you're recording, which may not be the most comfortable thing. And it also has a lot of handling noise. So you're going to have to be careful moving the microphone around while you're talking, because then it'll get pretty noisy. Also keep in mind that this microphone can be pretty bad when it comes to its overall plosive. So say Pikmin or Pokemon, it's very strong when you have harsh P's or B's going directly into the microphone's capsule. So having the microphone off to the side of your mouth like this can help reduce all those said P's or B's. Or you can also get yourself a windscreen for a handful of dollars. And now this will also help with your Pikmin or Pokemon, because now you're cutting out a lot of those plosives. I would also recommend getting a microphone stand or a boom arm or some kind for about $20 or so. That way you don't have to hold the microphone at all times while you're recording. But out of all the microphones in this test, this is by far the most affordable one if you can use an XLR microphone in your setup. This is how the audio sounds using a $20 lavalier microphone clipped to my shirt right around the chest area, which this is one of the best spots to put a lavalier microphone on you for the cleanest sounding audio. A lot of people do like having their lavaliers closer to their mouth, so we can move this up a bit and clip it to the collar of our shirt. But having the microphone up here now means it's much closer to my chin. So now if I lean over, for example, the audio is going to get a little more muffled due to my chin being in the way. But this still sounds pretty good even at this position. But if we move the lavalier microphone a little bit further down, put it right back at the chest area, I lean over here once again and talk into the microphone just like this, and it shouldn't sound as muffled as it did when it was right at my collar. But lavalier microphones are a great type of microphone for your videos or your live streams if you're going to be a lot more mobile. So now I can move around in my chair just like so, and I can even get up and start walking around my room just like so. And now the audio should sound very similar to how it did when I was sitting down. Lavalier microphones are great if you're going to be more mobile, and it's a microphone type I use personally a lot of the times when I'm going to be moving around a lot on my own videos or even live streams. This is how it sounds using a headset microphone, which is much closer to my mouth, and specifically the headset we are using is an Astro A10 headset. This is how it sounds using the built-in microphone via a cell phone being fed into OBS using the Joycam OBS plugin, and specifically the phone we are using to record for this video and audio test is a Moto G7. This is how the audio sounds using my phone as a webcam via the Joycam OBS plugin, and specifically I am using my personal phone for the said test, which is the Samsung Galaxy S22. And to round out our microphone tests, this is how it sounds using the Audio-Technica AT2020 using an XLR cable routed to the Focusrite Scarlett Solo audio interface. I have my microphone on a boom arm attached to my desk with a pop filter on it and also a shock mount attached as well to absorb all the vibrations being picked up from my desk anytime I'm tapping on it or even tapping on the mic arm. And this is how the audio sounds with this setup. This is my main microphone and the one I use for all of my videos and live streams. So this is a sound that if you watched my content a lot over the years, then you have definitely heard before. So tell me, out of all the microphones you heard in this roundup, which one was your favorite? Because we've tested a variety of different microphones here, and there are so many different sound stages between all the different mics and even using them in many different ways. So which one was your favorite? Comment down below and let me know. All throughout that audio test, you saw I swapped around between multiple video cameras. And now that leads me to our next topic in the video, which is cameras. So this is one thing I could definitely say is probably the most optional piece of equipment out of everything we're talking about in this video, which is very ironic because in the name of the equipment, this is a video camera, which is good for video. But if you're just wanting to share gameplay with people, You don't need a camera. In fact, you don't even need a microphone at that point if you didn't want to have your voice in the said recording as well. You'll just need something to record your said gameplay, and then that's it. But if you want to capture yourself on video, then this is our next piece of equipment we will want to take a look at. So to start things out, I want to talk about what I'm using right now to record this said video with. This here is a Canon Vixia HF-R600 camcorder, and this has been a camera I've used for many, many years for all the different videos I've filmed on the channel. So unboxing videos, reviews, some of the miscellaneous videos I've had where I'm just like showing off my room, for example, room tours. This has been a camera I've used for a very long time, and it got the job done. But the thing is with something like this is it's not a cheap thing. At the time that I got this camera, it was retailing for about $300, so it wasn't the cheapest camera. And nowadays, I just recommend most people, if you're just getting started, use your phone. Most of us have one of these in our pockets, and this will probably produce better video quality than any camera you can buy on the market right now. Unless you're spending hundreds of dollars, obviously. You're better off just using something you already have in your pocket. This here is the Samsung Galaxy S22, and I've actually been using this to film a lot of my videos recently. And people can't even notice the difference between me using a cell phone camera and a proper camera like I'm using now. This camera can record up to 8K video quality, which is insane. Although I really only use this to record in 4K, as it records in 4K 60 frames per second. So I'm able to record in a high video quality just like this, and then producing videos in 1080p. Now, since the video I'm recording is bigger than 1080p, I can use this to pinch into the video in post-production to zoom in without losing any video quality. So something like this is very powerful, and most of us have a camera lying around just in our pockets, and maybe you don't even have a phone. Maybe you have yourself a tablet. You can use that as well. Or if you have yourself a webcam built into your laptop, you can also use that, as any kind of camera you have will work just for starting out. Although I will say, if you're trying to use a laptop camera to film, say, like unboxing videos, then things are going to be a little more complicated. So if you're going to use something like a phone camera as well, then having yourself maybe a stand to put it on, this can help, as you don't want to hold your phone all the time. Maybe you want to have it propped on something, and now you can just use this and sit still and talk perfectly fine and show off whatever you want. Or also use this as another way to film. So now you have an easier way to hold the said phone. So one of these kind of stands, you can get yourself a mini tripod, or also known as gorilla tripods, for under $20, and this is a must-have, I would say, if you're using any kind of camera to film. Doesn't matter if it's your phone or a camcorder or a DSLR camera. If you have that kind of money lying around, you want to invest in the very high quality cameras, then having something like a mini tripod like this is a must-have and a very good investment. But you can get away without having one of these if you're really strict on the said budget. And in terms of webcams as well, as most people like to use webcams for live streaming on multiple platforms like Twitch and YouTube, or just in general to talk to their friends in a video call on things like Discord. So you can use, again, whatever webcam you have access to. Like, you can use your laptop webcam, or you can get yourself a cheap camera on places like Amazon, for example. So one of the said cameras that you can get, I see a lot of people recommend, is this 1080p webcam that costs less than $40. And people say it's very comparable to the Logitech C920 webcam, which is what I use, and we've even shown off during those audio tests earlier. But you can go even cheaper than that, and you can get yourself a Logitech C270 webcam, which is something I've used for many years as well before I got myself the C920 webcam that I use today. And it's a solid webcam choice for about $25. It's only 720p, but you don't really notice it's 720p in most video conference software like Discord, for example. And if you shrink down the camera in your live streaming or video setups, then people will not notice it's 720p. So you can easily get away with a camera just like that as well. And I've used that camera on some live streams in the past, and in fact, I've used a lot of the gear that we've shown off in today's video in some kind of stream in the past, and I will have linked down in the description below all of the different streams I've used multiple pieces of gear with, which includes budget webcams, budget microphones, a lot of budget setups in general, as I did some streaming on a budget live streams over my Twitch channel recently to show that you can do anything really, whether it be making videos or live streaming content with whatever gear you have. Which brings us to the conclusion of this video. You don't need the most expensive gear out there. You don't need the $400 microphone with the over $1,000 DSLR camera with the very fancy couple $1,000 lenses with all of the big lights around you. Like, you don't need any of that. You really don't. If you're just getting into this hobby of making content of any kind, you don't even need to buy things. You can literally start out with whatever you have and work your way up, as there's plenty of free software out there to use, whether it be software you can go download right now, like say OBS Studio to live stream with or record video, DaVinci Resolve to edit your videos in general, any of the software that comes with your computer, like you can just use the built-in camera app in Windows to record your video and even your microphone. You can use like a voice recorder as well, just to record audio only from your mic. You can use your laptop's built-in webcam and microphone to record your said video. You can just record video from your cell phone or even stream from your phone when it comes to either the camera on its own or even games, as some apps like the Twitch app on your phone will actually let you stream games from your phone directly by screen recording it. So no matter what you have by today's standards, you can start making videos. You can start live streaming. You don't need to spend the big bucks on things. You can use whatever you have lying around, whether it be most expensive gear or the cheap gear or the gear you already have mounted to your computer, or maybe that headset you use just for playing Call of Duty online with friends with. You can use whatever you have. And that is one of the best things about getting into this hobby nowadays. When I first started this hobby back in 2011, there weren't that many options when it came to the different pieces of software you can use and some of the gear that you can purchase for recording your videos. When it came to software, there was only a handful of different options to choose from, and your free options back then were things like iMovie on Apple computers or Windows Movie Maker on Windows machines, which got the job done, but both were very simple video editing softwares, which didn't really let you do all that much in general. And when it came to video and audio equipment, there were not many options out there in general. The biggest options that a lot of people used in this time period were things like a Dazzle capture cards, or a Diamond as well was on their pick. You had your Hauppauge or your Elgato capture cards. Those were your only two options at the time when it came to recording in high definition, as a lot of the other options out there were either really expensive or just wasn't really a thing a lot of people could use, because you had things like AVerMedia cards at the time, which a lot of people were using as well, but the AVerMedia capture cards were all internal PCI capture cards. So if you had a laptop, these would not work for you. So that made your options a little more limited, just kind of depending on the machine that you had. And in terms of things like live streaming, you barely had any options. I mean, when I started stuff in 2011, Twitch.tv didn't even exist yet. This shows just how primitive live streaming was back then. At that time, you barely had any options when it came to programs to use, so I heard one program a lot at the time, which was Wirecast, and the reason why I heard people talk about it was because of all the nightmares it had. People had a hard time always using the said software for live streaming, so this is why, by today's standards, if you want to get into making videos or live streaming in general, there are so many different options out there, whether it become paid options or if it's a free option. There's so many different things that you can use that nowadays, the only thing that's stopping you from getting into content creation of any kind is more of things that affect you personally. So you have to ask yourself, is this something that interests me? Do I want to put the time into this said hobby, to make up a streaming schedule if I'm live streaming, or edit the videos on a consistent basis for making videos on the platform? is this something I'm going to enjoy at all? Because if it is, then I can ask myself, do I want to pursue this even further and start investing into other pieces of gear? Because you can start out nowadays and use whatever stuff you have lying around, and then you can gradually work your way up to even better sounding pieces of gear for little money. As in nowadays, you can get a pretty high quality microphone for less than $50. You can get yourself a pretty high quality camera for basically nothing if you already have one in your pocket with your phone, as mentioned earlier, and you can use apps like IP Webcam or Joycam OBS if you want to pay $10 to get the paid version with no watermarks, and you can use your phone on your computer as a webcam. Or you can just use your phone on its own and just record video with this. There's so many different options now out there for you to use that it's more onto you if you want to start this hobby or not necessarily the gear or the software out there. Which, as a content creator, that makes me happy, because if this is something that you want to pursue, then you can easily do it by today's standards, as something like this is very beginner friendly, and I'm glad to see that. It's much different than when I first started. This is a very different landscape now, but it's in a more positive way. So if you want to go ahead and start creating videos or live streaming on your own, go ahead and start downloading the programs you need. Go ahead, download OBS Studio for free, DaVinci Resolve once again for free, you can get Audacity for free. Just start recording video, start making your live streams, and have fun with the said hobby. Because nowadays, the big thing that you need to get into this hobby is fun. And it's right there, ready for the picking. So, this is a video I've been wanting to make for a while, as I've gotten a lot of questions over the years how to do this or that when it comes to content creation, or what stuff you need to use or should use. And the answer really comes down to whatever you want and whatever you have. You don't need very specific gear, you don't need very specific setups to do any of this stuff. Use what you have, start the hobby out, see if you enjoy it, and then you can start getting whatever you think it's best to upgrade your setup with, as nowadays you can get whatever you need for whatever price tag. So get out there, start making videos, start live streaming, and start having fun with the said hobby. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it and hope you found something in here useful to take away for your own content creation hobbies, whether if you do video recordings here on YouTube or live stream on YouTube, Twitch. I hope you learned something from this and, well, get into the hobby if you haven't gotten into it already. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.